Okay, guys, I think we are live. Always like to make sure we're live here when we check in from Whirlwind Family Farm. Give it a couple of seconds here where others, if they want to join, can check in. Um, if you're watching this for the first time, I go live out in my garden here at Whirlwind Family Farm. I'm Jeff. For context, this is Central Texas, Texas Hill Country, and we're Zone 8, which is a warmer zone. And I have a little bit of a disadvantage if people tend to go live, and when they do it on a desktop where they can see everything. And because I'm doing this on my iPhone 17 Pro, everything's smaller. So if you have any comments, don't hesitate to comment at the end. Any questions, any comments. We don't claim to have all the answers in gardening, but we try to take each person to that next level. And together we all kind of learn and things that can benefit us in a garden each and every year. And I always contend that anybody can garden, and my rule of thumb, no pun intended, is everybody can have a green thumb. It's just a matter of process. So hope you're checking in with us today. We're just going to talk about something that I think gets overlooked, and that's fall gardening. And here we are, I would say deep into fall. We're into November now. Even here in Zone 8, we've already had a couple of freezes. Which the things that prosper in the fall, the freeze really is not a big deal. And I contend, and this is for those of you who live in more southern parts of the United States, I'd say below that 40th parallel, you get south of Kansas, you start to come down into the southern states. It's actually a time when some of your gardens can start doing better. Uh, Really, our best season here in Zone 8, which can be really hot in central Texas, is we do well in early spring. Things start to taper off, our tomatoes, our radishes, um, and things along those lines. They do a little bit better in the cold, like carrots, tend to taper off after we get to the summer. Now, in summertime, we still continue on with okra, we continue on with squash, and probably into mid-July with cucumbers. So because of some of our extreme hotter weather, things taper off. But those of you in a warmer climate, as you get to fall, some of that stuff can start to come back. I always think of fall is spring in reverse. The only difference is we're not gaining sunlight, we're subtracting sunlight until we get to December 21st, the winter solstice. And even though that's a colder time of the year, of course, everywhere in the northern hemisphere, that's when our days start to get longer again. So, with that being in mind, as we talk about fall here at Whirlwind Family Farm, I will talk about those things that, again, if you live in that warmer climate, you live in the South, I would say zone 7, 8, 9, or 10. 7 would probably be like if I'm here in Texas, if you go up into parts of the Texas Panhandle, you're going to be in zone 7. As you move on up into Oklahoma, Nebraska, I think that's you're moving into zone 6. But here we're zone 8. And again, if you're moving across the southeast or the southwest, you're going to be in that time when you're going to get a break from the heat, as we are right now. In fact, we've got a cold front that's supposed to be coming in tomorrow, Sunday, that's going to take us down into wind chill factors in the 20s. So I say all that because let's take a look at something. I'm going to show you how things, when we get to fall, start to turn back around again. Here's a group of radishes that were just recently, we start these off in our seed trays. And you can see these were planted back, and they're a little slower to germinate this time of year just because the daylight is shorter. But radishes back on October the 4th, they've germinated well. Here's some lettuce, mixed lettuce. You can see it's doing well. These will be planted out. These will be transplanted soon. There's a little bit of bok choy that is ready now. So this week we need to get that in the ground. There's a little bit of spinach. We had some germination issues. I actually think some insects got in on this, but there's some more spinach. And that's arugula right there. Also, it's at the point it needs to be planted out. If you look at these rows over here, that's spinach. And these, we've had a little bit of insect pressure on these, but they're starting to come along. And there's beets right over there. And I show you all this because this is the time of year when we start to get, as I said, we get a little bit cooler nights. We were down to 45 last night here in zone 8. And that just lends for these things to do better. So I'm going to walk back over to my southwest tunnel and show you something that typically ends for us, I would say, by the end of July. And what I'm going to show you are tomatoes, because the heat just becomes intense. Even though we do use shade cloth, and that's a 50% shade cloth, they always say, and this varies, this is not a hard fast rule, but it's pretty much the rule. If you're north of the 40th parallel, which is the middle of Kansas, Colorado, use a 30% shade cloth. If you're south of that, you use a 50% shade cloth. And that's what we do here, especially for cucumbers, tomatoes that we raise in these high tunnels. And that's kind of our rule of thumb. And I'm going to try something this year, maybe a mistake. Every year I pull this shade cloth off about this time of year. And then when we get back to the end of March, I put it back on. This year I'm going to leave it on because the sun is, even though it's the cooler time of year, the angle of the sun here in the fall and the winter is actually more direct. It's just that you're now at an angle, the sun drops lower in the south, your nights are cooler, and we're going to try it. It may be a mistake, but it is a process every year where it takes my wife and I getting up and on off of ladders, coming in with this wiggle wire. It's much easier to take it off than it is to put it on, but it's a pain every year to take that shade cloth. We're going to try it this year. I'll let you know how it goes. Could be a mistake. So we'll see about that. Let's walk in the West Tunnel, back to what I was talking about. And again, I'm going to give you an example of those cool weather plants that really excel. And if you look at this Swiss chard, that's Bright Lights. We get these seeds from Johnny's. That's a 50-foot row, 30 inches wide, and they're doing quite well. We've had insect pressure this year. That is a second planting of that Swiss chard. We had blister bugs early on. If you ever have an infestation of blister bugs, you got to pull it because it has a toxicity to it. And that was really frustrating. Lesson learned this year. It doesn't happen every year that you get those strong infestation of blister bugs, but next year I'm going to wait until mid-September before I plant. I've been lucky the last 3 years. I've planted late August and haven't had that issue with blister bugs. This year we did. But that's a second planting, and they're doing really well. Now, let me come in and show you. These 5 indeterminate cherry tomato plants right here, you can see. Hold on here, I got a bracket that's getting loose on me. Hold on, let's flip back around. Sorry about that. These are cherry tomatoes, indeterminate. As you can see, that one's already well up, about 7 foot tall. We trellis them. We use nylon string. By the way, always use nylon string if you're indeterminate tomatoes. Don't use jute. Learned that lesson several years ago. It gets wet, it starts to dissolve down, and it'll break on you. So always use a good, strong nylon string. But you can see we're now getting a second round of cherry tomatoes right in here. Right because it is fall, but they are making, and that's again because of this cooler weather. And they will continue on until we get a really, really hard freeze inside these high tunnels. These high tunnels don't prevent frost. They do help a little bit. They'll hold in a little bit of heat. But when you get down into the 20s or teens, it's also going to freeze inside of here as well. But my point being, because of this cooler weather, we're getting those production, those cherry tomatoes. There's some bok choy right there. But let me walk down and show you. There's a few tomato plants you can see. These are some big beefs that we planted back here, harvested off of them last night. But again, because of the fall weather, let me get in there close. Come over here, come around this side. You can see those tomatoes right there. Come in, you can see right in there. And again, I harvested off of this last night. So we've got tomatoes all through here, and they are thriving and doing well because we're in a cooler season. So my point being, and that's the one thing if I can drive home with all of this, those of you who do live in this southern climate where it tends to be hot, like Texas, like maybe you're over in Arkansas, which is a little cooler, or down in all the southern states, you can take advantage of this time of year, and it can be as big of a gardening season for you, spring in reverse, as you had in the spring. You're just going different. You're going with more greens. more things like the bok choys or the Swiss chards or the spinaches, beets, things like that. So it just gives you another variety of things to do in that fall. So again, put in the comments things that you do in the fall, maybe totally different than me, and you may have a ton more experience than me when it comes to those particular things. We just finished up with our cinnamon girl pumpkins. You can see they did succumb to frost, got a good harvest in, but they did pretty well. Our I'll have to say that these are pretty much done. There's some serranos that are really red. I'm leaving them in there as a cover crop more than anything, but a few jalapenos and serranos left. They actually do well for us deep into fall. But back over to the thing that I really, if I have to show you a thing here at the end that really is something that benefits of the cooler weather, and that's when you get to your carrots. And that's a 50-foot row, 30 inches wide of carrots. They're a little slower in developing. You got to keep them good and damp. And of course, we always talk about with our carrots, we like to have a soil that's very soft and malleable down to 9, 10 inches. That's why we broad fork. We don't broad fork everything out here because we're no-till. We do make that exception with carrots because it'll allow that carrot to go straight down and look like a carrot's supposed to look and not hit harder soil or anything and start to bend or start to turn. Not that there's anything, you can still consume carrots that have a bend or a turn, but we grow these for customers. We want them to look pretty and to look right for them. But again, we pretty much in this hotter climate, our carrot season ends around June. And one of the best descriptions, I had one of my customers tell me one time at a farmer's market, she said, here in this warmer climate, if you get carrots that are going into July, late June, July, they start to taste soapy. And I thought that was a great description. They just don't hold their taste in that hotter weather. But again, you get back to fall, it gives you that opportunity to really come in with carrots. And you can see these are doing well. If I can get down here and show you, if you can get in tight, you can see they're going down. Takes them a little bit longer to mature. In fact, I'll even try to pull one here. Let's see. This may not be, well, this, if I can find one here, may not be very big. Let's see if we can get it to pull out. These are in here pretty snug. See, it's not too bad. You can see that carrot right there. Got a little soil on it. That's okay. These are nice, tasty carrots. Don't have that soapy taste. I'll take a bite there. These are really good, nice and crisp. Don't have that taste that you would get if you pulled that out in the middle of summer. These taste really well. And that's why I say here in the southern areas, southern zones, it gives you another opportunity. And I'm going to show you a couple more things. These are bunch onions. Again, you may not have as much luck with them in the heat of the summer, but here this time in the fall, they do really well. Growth is a little bit slower because sunlight is getting less each day by the minute, but they do really well in this cooler season. And then I'm going to show you what I think to me is a perfect example of hardiness all the way into these southern winters, and that's turnips. We try to plant turnips every single year in this area, at least by mid to late September. We have started them. Some of these were started in late August, but they can withstand frost. I've even had them when they've been covered in ice. We were down to 17 degrees, and they still continued on. And I'm going to give you the perfect example right next to it. These are green beans that you can see obviously went through frost. Still beans on there, but they're pretty much done. If you look at that row, and right next to it, these are all turnips planted a little bit too tightly together. I use an earthway seeder when I plant these. You can see there's a row right there. There's a couple of rows. There's a couple of rows. That's Sweet Alyssum right there as a cover crop. But you can see a little bit of browning on these turnips, but they're doing fine. And when we get to this cold front comes through here later tonight, we start dropping down into the upper mid 30s, and by Monday night we'll probably be up. And knowing this area, they'll forecast for it to be 33, 35. Where I'm at, they never get the forecast quite right. That if they say 33, 35, we'll be in the upper 20s. But those Turnips will continue to do fine. I always say with turnips, you can, if you have a small garden, you can put your finger in the soil, make the furrow, hand plant them. If you have a bigger garden, you can get your little earthway seeder. They're not that expensive. I think I saw one. We paid 3 or 4 years ago. I think I paid 160. I think they've actually come down. I think I saw one on Amazon the other day for 130, 140 maybe for a little earthway seeder. And it comes with 5 or 6 different size plates to drop the seeds. So with everything I've showed you, my message is don't underestimate the things that you can grow in the fall, especially in the South, especially in the place where it typically is just roasting hot in the summer and some of the plants don't thrive. This is a season when they can thrive. And I think I kind of blame sometimes the general retail market out there for having these seasonal displays. You walk into any of the big hardware stores in the spring and they're going to have all the gardening things, tools and stuff. And it is the season, of course, but when it gets to fall, we turn to all the other seasonal things of the holidays with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that's great. But because of that, it just doesn't get the attention. And that's why I do this live broadcast today to say, don't forget your season. Don't forget that season of the fall where you can continue to have things grow for your family. So thanks again. We appreciate you finding our channel. If you're here for the first time, I'm Jeff with Whirlwind Family Farm. Check out our channel. We try to have at least 1 to 2 videos a week. We'll go live occasionally like we're doing right now, where we talk about techniques. And as I said at the beginning of this, we certainly do not have all the answers, but each year we try something a little different and try to push the envelope on things that we can try, just like we're doing this year with the shade cloth. May be a big mistake, but I have a feeling that everything's going to do just fine underneath it because, again, the sun's more direct, even though the days are shorter. And then when we get to December 21st, the days will start getting longer again. And last year, for example, we had cherry tomatoes all the way until I want to say mid-January when we had a frost that got down the teens and finally it did its damage and then we went in. But we had cherry tomatoes into January, and that's one of those advantages of living this far south. So blessings over you, your family, and your garden. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Check out our other videos and just hope you're doing well. Talk to you later.